Yes, it's so important that Buttercup's Baby be published, here in America. I signaled for coffee and a waiter poured us some. We fiddled with sweetener and low-fat milk and all that other yummy stuff we do to our stomachs these days. We sipped silently, and we looked at each other. Then I said the nuttiest thing. How old are you, Carly? How old do you want me to be? I know all about you. I know you were born at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago on August 12th, 1931. Pretty good? I nodded. She opened her purse then. All you have to know is this, Bill. I broke up with my boyfriend when I left Florence City, and he was 55. I have a thing for... And here she paused, smiled so sweetly. For vigorous older men. Mark Antony was never this smitten. She reached into her purse, handed me a piece of paper. This is just legal boilerplate. Have your lawyer check it out, then sign it and mail it back to me. What is it? It's called settling for peace. We agree to drop all the lawsuits. You agree that we did nothing wrong, and that you wish us the best on all future projects. I do more than wish you well. I'm going to kill myself doing Buttercup's Baby. Of course you would, she said then. And do you know the most important 6 words in the last 30 years in world culture? I'll tell you what they are. Peter Benchley came up with them when he was walking along a beach, and the words were these. What if the shark got territorial? Because out of that came the novel Jaws, and then the movie Jaws, and nothing's really been the same since. Well, Carly Shogg's next 6 words weren't that important, except, of course, to me. Before she said them, I asked her, why did you say, of course you would? You mean, of course you will? I'm doing Buttercup's Baby. That moment, waiting for her to speak, looking at the glorious lady, at her pale blue eyes, I remember thinking something weird is going on, something bad even. But in no paranoid nightmare could I have come up with what she said next. Stephen King is doing the abridgment. Here's what I did not say. What's the punchline? Here's another. You're killing me. Or, he'll laugh right in your face. Try, you rotten bitch. While I was busy saying nothing, Carly went smartly on. Here's what we get when you sign that letter. Safety. See, you're nowhere near King in terms of sales. No one is. We don't have to go there. But a lot of people connect you with Morgenstern because of the movie, and what we don't want is people wondering why you decided not to do the sequel. Goodwill is very important, and we can't have you running around claiming betrayal. I wrote this. I think you can live with it. Here's what she put down. I'm so excited Stephen King has come on board. Frankly, I'm exhausted as far as Mr. Morgenstern is concerned, so I wish everyone the best, and I don't know about you, but I can't wait to read Buttercup's Baby. I looked at her a moment before I spoke. She looked like Bela Lugosi now. He won't do it. King. I know him a little, and there's no reason on earth he'd get dragged into something like this. Steve doesn't feel he's getting dragged into anything. He's genuinely excited. We talk every day. Will, till everything's finalized. I don't believe you. I don't know what you're after, but find another buyer. I stood up. His name wasn't always King, Carly said then. He has ancestors who lived in Florence City way back when. He still visits in the summertime. I sat back down. Does he know about me? Bill, of course. And I told him just what the peace settlement says, that you're exhausted. That's easy enough to believe. My God, you haven't written a novel in well over a decade. She now strongly resembled Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'll see you in court, I said, tossing some money on the table, walking out. A stupid and hollow thing to say. She could keep pressuring me with the lawsuits. No question, she had all the cards. All but one. Late the next morning, I was sitting in the airport in Bangor, Maine. I knew King basically from Misery, a screenplay I wrote from one of his best and favorite novels. I'd come up to Bangor a couple of times, just your basic research, chatting with him, a few questions I thought could be better answered in person than over the phone. We had a sneak for him, when the movie was done, and Rob Reiner, the director, and I paced the lobby while it was on, hoping he'd like it. It meant a lot to us to please him. Rob's career really took off with Stand By Me, another work by King, a novella called The Body. We could tell as soon as we saw him walking out that he was happy about what we'd done with his baby. He loved Kathy Bates especially. Not alone in that, she won the Oscar for Best Actress. It's funny, but what I remember even more was the moment before it started when he left us to take his seat. The look on his face was so hopeful, like a kid. I commented on that to Rob, who said, "I think he's as vulnerable now as when he started," which is how he's managed to stay Stephen King. I don't think everyone realizes what a phenomenon he is. It's not just the hundreds of millions of books sold, it's that he has arguably been the hottest writer in the world for so long. Carrie came out in 1974, a quarter century sitting closest to the fire. I saw him through the window now. Jeans, lumberjack shirt, shambling walk. King's a lot bigger than you think, and remarkably unpretentious. We sat in a private corner of the waiting room. I hadn't eaten since the legendary lunch the day before with the Fiend of Florin. And I'd been up half the night getting everything all set, just how to say it rationally, novelist to novelist, storyteller to storyteller, and the way it went in my head, I wasn't even halfway through before he said, "Bill, that bitch lied to me. She said you didn't want to do it. I only said I'd get involved because she talked to a bunch of relatives I still have back there, and they put pressure on me, but I felt dragged into the damn thing from the beginning." The silence went on. King looked at me, waiting. I knew I was making him nervous, just sitting there, but I couldn't figure how to start. All I knew was I didn't want to embarrass him, or worse, humiliate myself. Finally he asked, "How's Kathy? I liked her in Titanic." He's giving you a way to start, I told myself. So talk about Kathy Bates. You've got a great Kathy Bates story. Tell him. "I don't see her much, but did I ever tell you how she got the misery part? It's a great story." King shook his head. "I wrote the part for her. I'd seen her on stage for years. She's one of the great actresses, but she'd never gotten her break in films. And before I started, I was talking with Rob, and I said, 'I'm going to write Annie Wilkes for Kathy Bates.' And Rob said, 'Oh, good. She's great. We'll use her.'" "Then what?" King said. "That was it. The most sought-after female role that year, and it went to this unknown. I loved being part of that, changing a life." "Great story, all right," King said, trying to sound enthusiastic, but I knew his heart wasn't in it. "No," I said way too loud. "I was not in the best of shape, as readers of these pages will have sensed." "No," I repeated more conversationally, "that's not the story. Here's the great story." King waited. "Okay, so Rob calls her in, just Kathy and Rob in the room, and she has never come close to a lead in a movie, and Rob just lets it fly. You've got the part." Kathy sits there for a moment before she says this. "The part. I've got it." Rob nods, repeats the news. "You've got it." Now there's another pause before Kathy comes out with this. "The Annie part. Annie Wilkes. That part?" Rob nods again. "Annie Wilkes. The lead." Now a little faster from Kathy. "And I've got it, and it's all set and everything." All set from Rob. Now she leans forward a little. "Let me just get this straight. I am playing Annie Wilkes, the lead, in Misery." "Yep," says Reiner. And Kathy goes on, "It's done and everything. I mean, I am definitely playing Annie, and that's set and done and everything, no mistakes or anything." And Rob says, "It's so set, you wouldn't believe it." And then there is a moment of silence in the room, and then she says this, "Can I tell my mother?" King just loved it. I do too. It's one of my all-time favorite sweet Hollywood stories. He laughed and smiled and looked at me questioningly, and I raised my right hand and said, "All true, word of honor." And I could feel myself at last relaxing. I knew I could do it now, talk to him, convince him not to do the sequel, because after all, I had done The Princess Bride, and even on this earth, fair was occasionally fair, and he said, "I really liked the movie." I said, "I did too, not just Kathy, but how about Jimmy Caan?" Then he said, "I meant The Princess Bride." "Thanks." So do I. And I was about to go on when I realized something. Something just awful. He hadn't mentioned the novel, just the movie. But my God, he had to like it. I was just being paranoid. I wish I felt the same about the novel, he said, and I could see it pained him to say it. The most popular storyteller of the century tells you that you suck as a storyteller. I would like to report I handled the whole thing with maturity. But alas, what I said like a total jerk was, yeah, well, a lot of people liked it just fine, thank you very much. Suddenly he was leaning in toward me. Bill, the way you caught his style was fine, but the fact is, I don't like a lot of what you did with the abridgment. For example, chapter 4, you cut out 70 pages on Buttercup's training. How could you do that? There was wonderful stuff in there. You must have seen the Royalty School. It's one of the greatest buildings left in all of Europe. Buttercup's curriculum is amazing. How could you leave it out? I was mostly interested in the story, the plot. And that's when I broke it to him. I never went there, to Florin. What was so important about going? What was so important? You flew up here just to check out things for a screenplay adaptation. That's a really loud plane. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Okay. I'll pause there for a second. As we discussed at the beginning, you can hear it. Yeah, it was like distractingly loud. As we discussed at the beginning of where because there's two introductions. There's two introductions at the beginning where he talks about like his life and some biographical stuff, none of which is true. So I'm wondering if in real life he actually does know Stephen King. I'm wondering how much of this is true. I don't think any of it is. But I don't know if there's any way to check that. You can't just Google, like, did this story happen? Unless he went on record and said that it didn't. Yeah, I don't either. But I feel like as an author, he wouldn't have just I think he did write the screenplay for Misery, and he wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So there is stuff that's like vaguely autobiographical. He does not have a son named Jason. He has 2 daughters. His ex-wife is not named Helen. So there's stuff that's like very personal to him that is not true. So like he kind of creates this illusion of like a version of himself that is a writer that has written the same things that he has written in real life. But it's one of those like I don't know, the whole thing with the Morgenstern estate. Morgenstern doesn't exist, so there were no lawsuits. That much I know. Which means that he wasn't hired, or he wasn't he. Now I'm like turning myself in circles. If Morgenstern doesn't exist, then the estate doesn't exist, then the lawsuits don't exist. But there still could have been some kind of obstruction to writing a sequel, which he's, I'm guessing, creating like a framing story for why he didn't. But it's kind of interesting that he's like, I didn't because Stephen King didn't think I was a good writer. Like, I wonder if they're actually friends in real life, I guess is what I'm getting to, is the point I'm getting to. But it's a thing that I don't think he would go on record to, like, correct, because that breaks down the illusion of the story that he's creating in this book. He wrote 2 other screenplays of King's novels. It seems likely they know each other well. Probably. But well enough for King to be like, I didn't really like your book. But I don't know, like, he might have just been like, hey, can I put you in my book? and say that this thing happened, and Stephen King was probably like, sure, whatever, I don't care. I lost which page I was on because I got distracted by the plane. Oh, right, because he was talking about flying. That is probably part of the joke. Yeah, and there's probably stuff in here that's like, if they are pretty good friends, there's probably stuff that's like an inside joke for them that we're not seeing. Hi there. Thanks for joining our book club. If you'd like to join the conversation, I would love it if you would leave us a comment. And if you'd like to see more, check out the playlist.